Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about role-playing games. Specifically, this is running adventures for the Game Master. This is a Game Master guide, and I thought it would be nice to look at designing ghost towns or a haunted town or something like that. And to get us started, I'm going to give you a breakdown of some of the basics, and then we'll look at this topic in a bit more detail. Now, the purpose of a ghost town is to tell a story, and usually that story is a great disaster. It might be a disaster, it might be a war, it might be hardship from the past, and you're going to use the town as a physical representation of that. A ghost town sort of inspires people to think about ghosts and, spirits that have passed on, and so we're going to incorporate a lot of these sorts of things when we're designing our ghost town. So if you don't have a ghost in a ghost town, you probably kind of missed the point. One of the great things is that you can use real ghost stories, and there's many ghost stories in ghost towns, and the history behind them, you can incorporate them into your adventure design. Now, wandering monsters is not something I would necessarily focus on, but I wanted to talk about it because it's probably going to be a topic that people are going to bring up. So let's discuss the topic. Wandering monsters in a ghost town will tend to be undead. There'll be unnatural spirits, things like that. You might even have some sort of unnatural being. The boundaries of the ghost town aren't as strict as other locations, so you can extend beyond that. But one of the aspects of a ghost is they tend to be bound to a location. Because there's no real way to stop wandering monsters like undead from moving out of the town, but ghosts might be restricted. But something like a zombie, ghast, ghoul, probably they're not restricted by the boundaries of the town, so they can extend beyond that if they need to. Now, the types of wandering monsters you might use, I'm going to recommend a small selection. Don't use all of them, just use some of them. Skeletons, zombies, ghouls, ghasts, the poltergeist, which you probably don't have a stat block for 5e, but it does exist in older versions of D&D and other role-playing games, the wight, the skeleton horse, the shadow creatures, hellhounds, nightmares, and will-o'-wisp. Okay, those are all things that you could definitely use, and that's not the only list you could use, but these are some of the things I thought I would suggest. Now, resting in a ghost town is kind of pointless because there will always be too many restless spirits that will be able to detect your living force. The player characters, they're going to give off a lot of energy, and therefore they're going to wind up getting their rests disrupted by the restless spirits in this ghost town. So you can't really rest in a ghost town. You explore, you investigate, you deal with issues, you solve problems, and you leave the ghost town if you want to rest. Don't use wandering monsters as a battle too often. I would suggest using a wandering monster as something outside of combat. It's not required that you always break tension, using a combat, because that is one of the other problems with making any kind of wandering monster something that you come across that you will definitely fight. I know that's sort of the assumption, but you can look at them in a slightly different way. Maybe they simply come across it, but there's no actual fight. It still will disrupt the rest potentially, but every time you include a wandering monster in your adventure, you break tension. The idea is to not show the monster, is to build up tension leading up to that confrontation. And as soon as you have a battle, you kind of eliminate that. And this is one of the problems with trying to run horror if you're running a role-playing game. Unless it's specifically designed for horror, it doesn't work very well. And unfortunately, Dungeons & Dragons suffers from this a lot. Now, random encounters, which is an extension of wandering monsters, it's a little different. Random encounters in a ghost town are not always monster fights. In fact, it's probably better that they not be monster fights at all. Select events or supernatural phenomena that the players can come across, things that they can interact with but don't require blasting with spells and swinging their sword. Here are a few different random encounters that can be placed at specific points during an adventure. So select the one that makes sense, okay? A common scene from a local sort of population relying on a ghost form, an apparition of a stagecoach, a wagon coming out of a building, something like that. Or you might even see a stagecoach leaving the town. Another thing you can use is the absence of living animals will certainly indicate that you're definitely in a ghost town. Those poison tumbleweeds that are being driven by a strong wind, which seems to only appear or be driving through that town and nowhere else. But also, strong winds from a storm are useful too. You can have player characters who can speak to plants and animals using a spell might be able to find a lot more information out about a ghost town compared to being able to talk to animals that don't exist because they are dead. But also speak to the dead, another spell that would be very useful. Now, role-playing your ghost. The inclusion of a ghost in a ghost town is kind of, as I said, vital. Otherwise, it's not really a ghost town in a role-playing game. You can include a battle with a ghost, yes, but it helps to actually figure out a way to drive the ghost away. Like, if you can solve the reason why the ghost exists, that's probably key. So the key point is the ghost interaction with the player characters, resolve the unfinished business for the ghost, and that actually lays the ghost to rest, because battling a ghost is kind of pointless. You defeat it, it will simply rise again and be back. So it's not like it's gone forever. A ghost can either be willing or unwilling to help or assist the party of characters. So not all ghosts need to be hostile. They might simply want to pass to the afterlife, whether that be heaven or hell. Okay. A ghost may be aware that they are not, they might not actually be aware that they are dead. So you might have to get the party to actually explain to them and put forward that process that, like, you're actually not alive anymore. And they might actually follow the same pattern of existence every single day, not realizing that they're actually not alive anymore. They just follow the same pattern that they were used to when they were alive. Now, the best way to deal with a ghost in a fight is to use something like turn undead abilities, destroy them with the paladin smites, keeping your distance, exorcism, divine prayers, or some sort of sacred flame cantrip. Pretty useful. Now, different locations you can include in your ghost town. The crumbling building. This is a crumbling building made up, it makes a great place to explore because there's a lot of natural hazards as the building is breaking down. You might have potentially some undead rats. I'm not really fond of the idea of having rats in anything, but I guess undead rats is better than rats. So it's important to remember that your crumbling buildings are a hazard and something you want to include. Now, empty buildings. You're going to have a lot of empty buildings. They allow you to explore. It helps build up tension, and it also gives them the opportunity to find things they can use during the adventure. Now, the ghost town cemetery. Probably something you want to include because it's a cemetery, graveyards, you want to have something like that. This is likely a place where you'll find a warning or a clue about what happened to the ghost town or the town and why it is now a ghost town. It might either be near the cemetery or in the cemetery, or it might be in a form of a sign, like a sign that's been placed up. There might be a journal in this place somewhere that you need to find. Warnings about the ghost town are always best placed in the cemetery because usually the cemetery is on the outskirts of your town. What else can you do? You can have exposed graves here. You can have the wet dead rather than the dry dead. Boot Hill has sort of like a still standing broken fence, or you might have a hearse situated outside the graveyard just sitting there waiting, and it's, for whatever reason, it might be broken down and just decrepit, or it might be just a figment or an illusion that's there. So there's a lot of things you can do with the ghost town cemetery. Also, if you're going to have a cemetery, you're probably going to have a church nearby. So include your ghost town cemetery. And a lot of the things about journals and other hints and tips can be put there. Abandoned houses. This is kind of like empty buildings, but the remains in a house will offer things like clues, equipment about the lives of the residents that were here before they died or they left. In some cases, it might be simply that everybody left rather than they died. Abandoned houses are something you'll come across a lot, so you can kind of duplicate the same thing over and over again. You've also got the general store. The purpose of a general store in a ghost town is to provide the players with gear, equipment, things that they don't need to pay for. You don't have to buy anything here. This is where it's free for all, so be careful about what you leave there. You have your ghost town tavern. Obviously, we're going to go to the tavern and see if there's some booze still lying around. You've got your ghost town jailhouse, where maybe there's some skeletons in a cell, who knows. Lots of different things, but it also, again, provides you with a lot of hints and tips. You've got your ghost town schoolhouse, where you can have things written up on the blackboard and books and diaries. It's an opportunity for the game master to drop, yet again, more information. Like every place that they go to is like another place where they might potentially find a clue that tells them more about the story and what is going on, or at least what's going on in this ghost town. And then finally, your hotel or inn. This may simply be something such as a brothel, or it might be just an inn or a hotel. It's really up to you. So there's a lot of different things you can do with this. And of course, at some point you need to have a bunch of, or at least one adventure hook for your ghost town. But that's something I'm going to save for another day. I'm hoping that this was useful to you, and if it was, fantastic. I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank my patrons who support me so I can keep running this program. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.